History is full of amazing accomplishments. The discovery of fire, the wheel, modern agriculture, and remedies to multiple diseases. But all those things pale in comparison to one lingering riddle. Who were the Buffest Dudes in history? Move out of the way, penicillin, and make way for muscle, because today we're going to be answering that question. Welcome to Buff History. Here. Our first historical buff dude made his mark in 6th century BC and hailed from Great Greece. Not only was he a decorated wrestler, he was also a military leader as well. His name? Milo of Croton. You gotta hand it to the Greeks, even their name sounds buff. But it's gonna take a lot more than a buff sounding name to get onto this list. So let's cover some of his accolades. Milo was a 6-time Olympic champion. In addition to this, he won multiple other wrestling competition titles, competing at the highest level of competition for over 20 years. So what kind of food did a 2-decade champion eat? His daily diet allegedly consisted of 20 pounds of meat, 20 pounds of bread, and 10 liters of wine. Seems a little unreal, doesn't it? Well, consider this. Milo was also, by most historical accounts, the originator of progressive weight training, which he used to become the greatest wrestler in Greece. So this dude basically helped invent bodybuilding. Not bad. So what did his ancient workout routine consist of? Taking a newborn calf, he carried it around his hometown day after day, week after week, and month after month. As the calf grew, so did Milo's strength, carrying this small calf until it grew into a full-grown bull that he straddled upon his back. And what did Milo do when the bull was grown? This cherished friend, this companion who had helped him through hard times in order to finally capture Olympic gold. He ate him. Huh? Yeah, I think I grew a little bit of chest hair just saying that out loud. Throughout history, his legend only continued to grow, being written about by the likes of Aristotle and William Shakespeare. That's basically like the modern day equivalent of being tagged by The Rock on Instagram. So yeah, kind of a big deal. And Milo wasn't content to rest on his accomplishments either. Even in death, this dude went big. Legend has it Milo was walking in a forest when he came upon a tree trunk with a split in it. Attempting to completely rip the trunk in two, Milo inserted his hands into a tree and began tearing it apart until he lost his grip and the tree closed upon his hands, trapping him. Unable to free himself, Milo was then eaten alive by wolves. I gotta stop talking about Milo. This is getting ridiculous. Next up is the ultimate battle of man versus machine. The past painfully struggling to fight off the advent of the inevitable future. The classic American folktale of John Henry. A true buff dude, John Henry represented the working men who struggled to keep their jobs on the railroad as machines began taking over. Although embellishment has no doubt been added to the tale over the years, historians do agree that a John Henry did in fact exist. So who was this turn-of-the-century buff dude? John Henry was an ex-slave who worked on the railroad as a steel driver, hitting big spikes into bigger rocks, and gaining a reputation for being the strongest and fastest worker there ever was. For instance, when the owners of the railroad company he worked for decided to drill through a mountain as opposed to build a railroad around it, many workers lost their lives to this dangerous task. But not Big John Henry. Hammer swing after hammer swing, spike after spike, he slowly dug his way through and finally emerged on the other side of the mountain, with his legend only growing. One day a salesman appeared to the railroad company, and with him he brought his steam-powered drill. Fast, efficient. This thing was the future. Naturally, the railroad workers were offended. How dare this slick salesman come around and try to take away our jobs, dangerous as they may be. So a contest was arranged. John Henry on one side, the machine on the other. It was a hard-fought battle, and when it was all over, John Henry came out the victor, as he had sunk the steel down 14 feet, with the machine managing only 9. The workers celebrated as their hero had won. but sadly there was a price to be paid, as John's heart gave out from the stress of the match and he passed away that very day. John Henry died as John Henry lived. A buff dude. After this historic match, his legend only continued to grow, with the Ballad of John Henry song being covered by artists such as Johnny Cash, Jerry Reed, Bruce Springsteen, and more. If you ever get a chance, you should check out some of them. They're pretty sweet. And so is John Henry, a true buff dude. Yeah. Voted the greatest athlete of all time, Jim Thorpe was a superhuman specimen before the era of performance-enhancing drugs. Versatile in multiple sports including professional football, baseball, and basketball, he won Olympic gold in the 1912 pentathlon and decathlon and was the first president of what we now call the NFL, or National Football League. Born to an Irish father and Native American mother, Thorpe began his athletic career in 1907 when he decided to challenge a group of college high jumpers and promptly beat them at their own game with a jump of 5 feet 9 inches. And not only had he beat them, he had done it wearing his street clothes. Kinda gives me the impression that Jim probably didn't wear skinny jeans. Thorpe was a natural athlete, and he finally gained nationwide attention in 1911. As a running back, defensive back, place kicker, and punter, Thorpe scored all of his team's field goals, defeating Harvard in a major upset, Harvard being a top-ranked team in the early days of the NCAA. In the spring of 1912, he started training for the Olympics, and although strong competition was expected from a rival athlete in the decathlon, he crushed him by 688 points. Even more incredible was the fact he had competed in a mismatched pair of shoes, as his was stolen just before he was scheduled to compete. Coming back to America a hero, Thorpe later commented that he heard so many people yelling his name that he didn't realize a fellow could have so many friends. After the Olympics, Thorpe continued his athletic endeavors, playing professional basketball, football, and baseball with the New York Giants. And although some may use the argument that maybe his competition wasn't as fierce back then, or they didn't have modern technology available as they do now, that's a big part of the charm of Jim Thorpe's legend. Again, this was before the advent of performance-enhancing drugs, back when saying you were natty simply meant you hadn't gone through a pack of smokes and a full pot of coffee before the game started. Sadly, as Jim's athletic career came to a close, he found himself broke and unable to pay for such things as hospital visits for cancer, in which he was admitted as a charity case. Thorpe died at his home in 1953 at the age of 65, with his legacy firmly cemented as one of the greatest athletes the world had ever seen, topping ABC's Wide World of Sports Athlete of the Century Award over Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Wayne Gretzky, and more. There you go, 3 buff dudes from history. But there's a hell of a lot more of them out there, so please let us know who you would have picked and why. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of Buff History. It's something we've wanted to do for a long time. This episode was a little low budget, just trying to get the feel for things, but we'd love to do some in the future, covering how fitness began, how food evolved to where it is today. Just a lot of fun stuff with skits, humor, comedy, and, you know, some historical facts sprinkled in there as well. Buff dude stuff, you know. So until next time, start working on your legacy so you can cement yourself into the history books and stay buff.